is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
The day after the Super Bowl is always one of those days that you either talk about the commercials, you talk about the halftime, or you talk about the game. There was a lot to chew on at halftime and during the commercials, but the game was extraordinary. I don't know when I've seen a better Super Bowl or a more dramatic ending, so we certainly understand if you would like to opine on that. And I was really thinking, I remember having this thought with Nick Saban before the kick six in Auburn a little over a year ago, that here's a man marching toward greatness, marching toward possibly a spot next to Bear Bryant as the greatest coach in college football history. And one play changed that last year. Another play or two changed it this year. And there was Pete Carroll, a yard and a half from the goal line. And, if he wins 2 Super Bowls on top of 2 national championships, including that one that got away against Texas, and you have to think, man, this guy is probably the best football coach in the world. And today he is a GOAT. That's how quickly it can change, and that's how close it is. And suddenly Belichick is back to being the best coach in the world, and Brady the best player. 855-242-7285. Love to get all of your reactions to these stories. Why don't we start by talking to Ron in Ocala, Florida. Good afternoon, Ron. Thanks for the phone call.
Oh, great, man. It's no thanks to me. This is the greatest show because, you
there, Ron?
You're dedicated to the voice. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I was saying it's the greatest show because you're dedicated to the fans. But, I was looking at the Super Bowl yesterday, and I just can't believe that Pete Carroll would let that happen. I mean, you're right there at the 1-yard line. He backs up the team. If you look at the play, Russell Wilson backs up all the way to like the 5-6-yard line to throw the ball. You never do that. I don't understand why he didn't just run the ball and get the second championship. I couldn't understand that. But Daryl from the other day, he had said, about the Bulldogs this and the Bulldogs that they had won the national championship, before we did. That doesn't really matter. Since 1980, we have dominated Georgia. And for them to only have one national championship since 1980, it'll kind of show you, what that program has been. They're pretty much in a rut, I feel like. They need to make a change as soon as possible because it's a winning mentality that you got to have to be dominant.
Well said. Hey, thank you very much. Good to hear from you. Marcus is in Statesboro, Georgia. Marcus, good afternoon. Thank you.
How you doing today, Paul?
I'm well. Thanks a lot.
I watched the show last week, and I heard what Charles from Reartown, Missouri had to say about women. Charles has no business saying that about women. I think you ought to suspend the man for at least a month. I don't know Charles well as you do. You've met him. I haven't. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But what he said about women, totally uncalled for, inexcusable, and he needs to be reprimanded. And I'm not comparing this situation to Ray Rice. Let me be clear on that.
Glad to hear
But
it.
what he said, thank you. But what he said was inexcusable. And by the way, is Debbie single? From Kimberly, Alabama.
No, she's married. Listen, Marcus, let me say this. We try not to be the world court here. That's at The Hague. We do occasionally make decisions based on improper conduct. John knocked one of our callers out of here a couple of months ago and is still taking retribution. But I want to go back to Charles. I flew out of here after the show Friday night, landed close to midnight, grabbed a cab at the airport, get in the cab, and the guy happens to recognize me. And after I told him where I was going, first thing he said is, "That Charles from Reeltown really going to take on Marcus Spears?" I said, "Yes, sir, he is." So I called Marcus on Saturday. I said, Marcus will be here, by the way, tomorrow and Wednesday, and we'll talk more about it. But he got the biggest kick out of some cabbie wanting to talk about the mano a mano between the two.
I tell you, that's what makes the show great. I'm telling you, we could sit here and talk recruiting. We could sit here and talk about the Super Bowl. We could talk about Nick Saban, his legacy. But people are just so ingrained of the culture, the callers, these fights that happen. You know, we mentioned banning some callers. Yeah, if you say a few words on the radio or on national television, you might get the axe. But Charles will be around. He's not going to go on probation.
No.
He's flirted dangerously with that line many times before, but he's around. He's going to stick around.
And let me say this. I don't think I need to explain my position on women on this program, but I don't think Charles really means what he says. Charles just isn't educated. I mean, the bottom line is he doesn't know any better. And I think sometimes you have to look past people's inherent shortcomings. He just really doesn't understand that women now have a right to vote in this country, that women can hold jobs, that women have moved out of certain places in the house and have actually gone down the street and do more than just bring home bacon to cook for Charles every morning with his scrambled eggs. I mean, it's sad on one level, but that's who he is. And I will say this: he's a good person. I know him. I don't think he understands. He looks at it through the prism of football. And in his mind, women don't belong on a program talking about football. And by the way, I had this conversation last year with some of the heavyweights at this network about Condoleezza Rice, and some of them had the exact same feeling. So Charles is not alone. He just happens to be a little more prominent here than most people. Jim is next in Birmingham as we get going on a Monday. Hey, Jim.
Greetings, Paul. Great show.
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned Pete Carroll and Nick Saban's Kick 6 decision, and poise under pressure is critical. And I kind of felt like I was wondering if Nick Saban had phoned in that play at that last call.
No, that was not Nick Saban. No, that was Lane Kiffin.
You have to play, as Saban always says, you need to play the game from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, but Jim, you know what? I mean, that's Pete Carroll blew the famed Texas SC game. I was being interviewed today, and someone asked me, "Do you think Pete Carroll will survive?" I said, "Yeah, I think he will." I mean, he survived blowing a national championship game, and no one really remembered it because he was on his way to 2 straight Super Bowls. Although I think winning back-to-back Super Bowls would have put him at a level really unmatched. The one thing I like about Pete Carroll, though, he shrugs it off. He'll be in Malibu later today, I'm sure, hanging out. He's not going to let this bother him like some people. I mean, he's won 2 national championships and a Super Bowl. I think that will get him through the winter, don't you?
Yeah, but Belichick's teams don't lose their poise. And I thought, I was pulling for the Seahawks, but I got that sinking feeling when Baldwin committed that penalty after his touchdown, the unsportsmanlike penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And, then they had the, kickoff off from 15 yards back, and I thought, boy, it's just not going to end well for the Seahawks.
Well, I mean, listen, I have become more of a fan of Belichick in recent years, but, I mean, he was clearly owed one. I mean, he had a perfect season, and it all went away in that incredible game against the Giants, and it almost went away on another incredible catch, but I think it was justice. And by the way, those in the NFL, what he did is not that unusual. I mean, look how the half ended. Pete Carroll rolled the dice and he won. This time, I don't even think pro coaches look at it that way. That play is normally a touchdown.
So is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback of all time?
He is. No longer do we look at Joe Montana in that regard, or Terry. I frankly think you'd have to go with Montana. That would be my bet. But Brady is very close.
Yeah, and we're at recruiting week here, and it's interesting. There were absolutely no 5-stars.
No. Well, yeah, and but I mean, 2 of the biggest stars of the game, no one had ever heard of until yesterday. But that's pro football. I mean, people act like I heard some commentators say, Brady, Russell Wilson. I mean, everyone. We look at these players, but they're also part of a professional organization.
And a kid from Little West Alabama is the hero of the Super Bowl. He didn't earn the MVP, but wow.
I mean, I'm not even sure he was sure. I'm not even sure Butler was certain before the game that he would have a ride home afterwards.
Yeah, and then I just want to tell these recruits, I'm an Auburn fan, and I want them to remember that there's 2 kinds of people in Alabama: people who have 3-figure IQs, and with the exception of Charles, the others are the Alabama fans.
Jim, you haven't changed. I mean, one thing I admire about you, we know each other a long time. Even when you take your shot at the other side, you do it in a highbrow fashion.
Well, it's all in fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun this week, and I hope your ratings go through the roof. I'm sure they will.
Thank you. No, we hope so. We're just trying to hang on for dear life here on the Finebaum Show to get extended for another week. That's our goal.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We are back with Booger McFarland, played in a couple of Super Bowls, and certainly understands the feeling of ecstasy and agony, and we'll also get his take on Johnny Manziel and what is happening on Wednesday. Booger, hope all is well. Appreciate your time. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Paul. How you doing, buddy?
What's happening?
Hey, man, life is good, man. Just down in Tampa, Florida, enjoying the sunshine. It's 75 degrees. I just finished the workout, and I'm feeling pretty good, buddy.
So what's it like the day after winning a Super Bowl?
It's an unbelievable feeling, Paul, just because, you know, it's one of those dreams that you think can happen, but you really don't know until you do it. And for me, I had two different feelings. In Tampa, I was on the team, but I didn't get a chance to play. So the celebration was great. I was happy, but there was a feeling of emptiness because I was hurt for the game and didn't get a chance to play. Now, in Indy, when I got an opportunity to play and start and, you know, contribute in the game, it's just a surreal feeling for all your accomplishment, all your work, and all your effort, your blood, sweat, and tears to go into something and realize that you are one of a few people, in comparative speaking, from an overall standpoint, that's ever won a Super Bowl, and it's just a tremendous feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, there's ecstasy and a hangover, positively, I should say, from any type of victory. But I've always wondered the day after the Super Bowl. I mean, it's not like you got much to do. I mean, you've got some time off. I would imagine that's pretty fun to plot the next few weeks out.
Well, the next few weeks are great because the first thing I did was went to McDonald's because I realized that it was something I couldn't have during the season. So I went and got like 5 sausage and cheese biscuits. For lunch, I had like Krispy Kremes, and then I just pulled the golf clubs out because you realize that now that all the hard work is done and all the hay is in the barn, you get to let your hair down and relax a little bit, Paul, and enjoy some fruits of the labor, because if you don't enjoy it, you continue to drive yourself and you won't feel like you got any type of reward. So you have to enjoy it in whichever way manner you see fit.
That's what I do. The day after, when the college football season ends, Booger, I mean, I head out of the stadium, or when I get home from the airport, I go right to a shop and get a kale smoothie.
Hey, Paul, listen, nothing against you, but I've never drank a kale smoothie in my life, and I don't think I ever will.
Well, I've never won a Super Bowl. I think I'd splurge if I did that. Let's talk a little bit about the serious story of the day, and it didn't really shock people this morning when the news broke that Johnny Manziel had gone into rehab. Your reaction, and what does it mean?
Well, first and foremost, let me say this. I hope whatever he's done in the rehab part, that he gets help and he gets it fixed, because he's a young guy and he's still got the rest of his life in front of him. But, Paul, if you remember back, our colleague, Wright Thompson, who works for ESPN, writes ESPN.com, wrote an article about Johnny Manziel. And he talked about the interaction that Manziel had with his mom and his dad and the upbringing. And I'll never forget a story, Paul, and I tell it to people all the time in that article. He talked about when Johnny Manziel was at a restaurant with his family, and there was an NFL player there who wanted to meet Manziel. And the waitress came over and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Manziel, such and such." I don't remember the guy's name. Wanted to meet you, and Johnny was like, "No, I don't want to." And I believe it was his aunt and his uncle said, "Johnny, you should go ahead and meet the guy, because it might be good for you." And Johnny turned to his aunt and uncle and said, "Shut the bleep up." Now, Paul, where I come from, which is down in the South, those is fighting words. Like, your mom would literally backhand you in the mouth for talking to your aunt and uncle that way. And Johnny Manziel is a young man that's grown up in a wealthy family. He's been privileged a lot in his life. And I think he's always had things handed to him. But when he got to the NFL, he saw that this game wasn't going to be handed to him. And whatever addiction he turned to is now bad for him. But you got to give him kudos for recognizing that. But I think he's a young man that's been spoiled a little bit early in his life. I think he's got to grow up and grow out of that. And hopefully his mom and dad will be there to help him, because it's something that they're going to need to help him along the way.
No doubt. Certainly He is, and I've gotten to know his father a little bit, and Johnny to somewhat, not great, but I know people around Johnny, and he has been enabled. And you know better than anyone, there's a big difference between being enabled in college football and showing up at Cleveland as the first-round pick and have the older guys in the locker room look over there and go like, what's the deal with him? And then see how poorly he played when he finally got that start about 5 or 6 weeks ago. I want to turn the page to college football. Before we get to National Signing Day, we talked to you a little bit about LSU's search for a defensive coordinator. They finally hired Kevin Steele, surprised some people. And then the other day, one of Steele's former players at the University of Alabama, Clinton Dix, unloaded on Steele on Twitter, leaving a lot of people to go ha-ha when he said, the last time this guy was a defensive coordinator, he gave up 70 against Clemson. To me, that's not exactly a positive endorsement as he begins his first offseason at LSU.
No, Paul, it's not a positive endorsement, but here's the thing I'll say. That was a while ago. I think it was a few years ago he gave up 70, and I think he's been under the tutelage of Saban and Kirby Smart. So I think he's learned something. Let's not forget that when Bill Belichick, who won the Super Bowl last night, was at Cleveland, even though he had a little success, he got fired there. They didn't do very well. So from a coach's standpoint, if you can name me a coach that hadn't been fired, please go ahead and do that, because all of them have been at one time or another. So Kevin Steele has had his low times, and I think LSU is saying, okay, we want to play really, really good defense. We lost John Chambers. Where can we go to get somebody who understands really good defense, who understands the SEC, who knows what it's like to go against Alabama because he did it every day? And I think Kevin Steele was someone who, after the other people, because Kevin Steele wasn't LSU's first choice, so after the other people turned it down, I think Kevin Steele was a logical choice and maybe the only choice for Les Miles.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, but it just doesn't seem like you can outrun certain things. And, of course, Kevin Steele was a big success at Florida State under Bobby Bowden as one of the top recruiters in the country, and that's why Nick Saban hired him initially in 2007. Let's turn to National Signing Day. The big story right now seems to be Alabama on one side, Georgia coming on strong, and on the other side of the coin, what about Florida? It's not over yet. They're still in on a couple of players, but it looks like Muschamp being retained for a year hurt them badly, and Muschamp going to Auburn is hurting them as well. So Muschamp has pulled a double whammy on the Gators.
Well, Muschamp may have pulled a double whammy, but Florida and Coach Jim McElwain, I think this recruiting class is going to be a down year. I think they're going to get a couple of people who we don't think they're going to get right now. But next year, I fully expect the Gator recruiting class to step back up. Let's not forget, Coach McElwain just got hired, less than a couple of months ago. So it's going to take him time to build the relationships. And that's all recruiting is about. It's about developing and building the relationships. And as far as Alabama, Paul, we know Alabama is going to have the number one recruiting class for the fourth year in a row. They're going to be number one. And some would make a case that with all that talent, Nick Saban has kind of underachieved the last couple of years. I'm not saying that, but when you sign the number one recruiting class every year, big things are expected. In the last couple of years, Alabama hasn't delivered. And from Georgia's standpoint, Georgia's got to find a quarterback. And Hudson Mason, he waited around for 5 years to get his turn. Todd Gurley's gone. They got to find a quarterback. They got Nick Chubb to lean on. Defensively, you got Leonard Floyd coming back. So it's going to be big. But the person or the school that I'm looking and most excited about is Butch Jones in Tennessee, because Tennessee has spent more money over the last few years on recruiting than anybody in the country, Paul, and I think it's starting to show. I look for them to sign another dynamite class, and I've said all along, my sleeper pick to win the East and compete for an SEC title next year is Tennessee, and I think this recruiting class is going to solidify, maybe not with starters, but it's going to give them some quality depth to go along with last year's great recruiting class. So that's just a little taste of what's coming up Wednesday on National Signing Day.
And finally, I hate to end on such a down note, but about 2 weeks ago, Greg Anthony, one of the top broadcasters for CBS, he was their lead basketball announcer, was arrested for soliciting a prostitute. And a few minutes ago, we learned that someone you probably know really well, Warren Sapp, working for the NFL Network, was arrested for soliciting a prostitute in Phoenix in the wee hours after the title game. I know I'm asking you kind of a loaded question here, Booger, but is there any way to explain this type of alleged behavior to the average person watching at home and listening?
Well, Paul, I'll put it to you this way. I got my first job when I was 13. There was an older white gentleman who hired me, and he taught me everything I know about working and hard work. And one day we were sitting on the wood pile, and we were, it was cutting wood, and he said, Booger, he said, you got a tremendous work ethic. He said, but let me tell you, there are two things in a man's life that can be the downfall of every man, no matter what color you are: a whiskey glass and a woman's you-know-what. And to this day in my life, Paul, those are the two things that complicate things for most men, alcohol and women. And if you want me to explain it, look no further than that. He's a man. Men have temptations, and most men at one point or another have had to deal with alcohol and women. And it's how you handle those two situations that ultimately determine the outcome of your life. And I feel bad for Warren for the alleged incidents. I feel bad for Greg Anthony, but they're not the first guy nor the last guy that's going to fall temptation to a woman, Paul.
Well said, Booger. Well said indeed. Thank you so much for the time, and we'll see you very soon.
All good. Thanks, P. Diddy.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jack is next in Florida. Jack?
Yeah, hey, Paul. Hey, that was a real good comment from Booger McFarland when you were asking him about the Florida situation, saying that it's not looking too good right now, but he felt like it would turn around and stuff, which is totally opposite from the way you handle it. You almost seem like you get off on putting your foot on the neck of Florida with him suffering through this right now from Foley making a mistake. And I don't understand what it is. Do you have an agenda or something with Florida, or is that just how you are, or what's the deal? You have a love fest with some and you despise others. Can you help me out with that?
I'll do my best. First of all, Jack, we are simply reporting what people are saying about Florida's class. I'm not a recruiting expert. I've never professed to be one. We have recruiting experts on here that look at situations. We had Jim Donnan on the other day. We had Tom Luganville. We've had others. We'll have one in just 3 or 4 minutes. And we're reflecting what's going on down there. But if Jim McElwain turns this around, then I think he's off and running. But I don't think you can outrun the perception that something is going poorly. And what it is that Jeremy stuck with Will Muschamp, and it blew up. Am I on record as being supportive of his decision? Yes. Anyone who watches ESPN knew that. But the point is, he gambled, and he lost badly, and now he's paying a severe price for that. And Will Muschamp, instead of sitting out like a lot of coaches do, he's now at Auburn making things even more difficult and complex for Florida because he has an in with these players, and Jim McElwain spent the last 3 years in Colorado.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think shows like yours and ESPN and people like that ramp up and give all the good news about some schools help their recruiting, and then continually talking about Florida's demise hurts their recruiting?
Well, let me say this, Jack. I don't think this program affects recruiting one iota, because I don't think any 17-year-old trying to decide to go to Florida or Auburn is watching us and allowing what we say here to impact his decision. That's just my opinion. I'd love to think we have a lot more influence than we do, but I don't think we do. I don't think young people turn on the radio or turn on the television and say, let me see what that guy is saying today before I decide where I'm going to spend the next 5 years.
You know, Paul, I'm an avid Yager fan, have been for years and years and years, and this is really sad, to watch what's going on down there. But I know some people are loving it, and it'll probably turn around. I'm going to be realistic to know that it's going to take quite a while now if we have a really bad recruiting year. But really, I kept an open mind with your show when it first started, and I don't know why that anyone would continue to want to watch their school be slammed as bad as Florida is by you guys that would even want to continue to watch it. So that's just where I am right now. Maybe my Florida buddies will agree and quit watching it. So thanks.
Thank you. Bobby is up next in Birmingham. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, buddy, how you doing today?
Hey, by the way, I got the calendar you sent me today. I really appreciate that.
A lot of history in that.
Wow, that Bobby sent me a history of the civil rights movement in Birmingham. It was spectacular. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I saw your name in there among the heroes of that time.
Yeah, well, if you pay attention to May 3rd, that was my day.
Well, I understand. Well, I appreciate it, and it means a great deal to me.
All right. Hey, this is what I called about. That last play last night in the Super Bowl. That's what I'm talking about. Stats, percentages, no common sense. When I saw that play, I had a flashback. 2012, Bryant Dennis Stadium, Alabama, Texas A&M.
Same play.
Same play. But I'm willing to bet you $10 to a gold guinea, Eddie Lacy, or Marshawn Lynch was good for a yard and a half or 2 yards. But I ain't gonna hold you, buddy. But
well, you know, I mean, Marshawn had it on the play before, and he nearly got in, and you know, there's no doubt he would have gotten in on the next play. I didn't buy Pete Carroll's explanation that he felt like he was wasting a play. I mean, how are you wasting a play if you score?
Well, what I did, Paul, I did the same thing I did in 2012. I changed to the love sound.
You turned it off.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. I want to wish football Johnny the best. But I'm thankful for my parents, Paul, because they taught me. And everything I got it the old-fashioned way. I work for it. So have a blessed day, Paul. And
Thank you, Bobby. Again,
got your package.
I can't. I got it today, and it means a great deal, and I'll treasure it.
It's a conversation piece, Paul. When you're sitting around talking to some of your friends, you can show them that part of history right now.
No, well, thank you very much. But yeah, for those who weren't quite sure following our story, Bobby was one of the foot soldiers in Birmingham in the 60s with Dr. Martin Luther King. He was arrested, and Bobby, they did a commemorative calendar, the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement in Birmingham. Bobby sent me a calendar. I received it today. It means a great deal. So thank you so much.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We're joined now by Mike Farrell from Rivals. He is the National Recruiting Director. Mike, it's always good to catch up. I know this is a busy time. As we head toward Wednesday morning, what stories are you keeping the closest eye on right now?
Well, you know, I'm keeping an eye on USC to see if they can take over Alabama for number one. Alabama's been our number one for the last 5 years, 6 out of 7, and you know, just a dominant force. But USC, if all goes well over the next couple of days, they could push to number one. The number one player in the country hasn't committed yet. That's Byron Cowart. He's choosing between Florida and Auburn. We've also got, you know, 2 more of the top 5 players in the country, Iman Marshall from California and Martez Ivey from Florida, that have to make their decisions as well. So, you know, we've got a ton of guys, you know, that are making decisions, even some committed kids that, you know, have been committed for a long time, aren't telling us where they're going to send their letter. So there's going to be some surprises on Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, I want to go back to that Florida-Auburn because Will Muschamp had very little success, although his recruiting classes on National Signing Day were very good. Players didn't last or pan out. But in looking at these final few players, what are you watching for? And to say the least, Muschamp has had a big impact on Auburn, but how much impact will he have against his old school?
Yeah, you know, the thing about recruiting is nowadays it's years and years of work that you put in, you know, and it's a bit of a shame because, you know, these guys, Martez Ivey, as I mentioned, you know, Byron Cowart, C.C. Jefferson, the defensive end from Florida, you know, they were all leaning towards the Gators if Muschamp stayed because he's recruited so well. And he's worked on these guys with some of his staff for so long. So there is a loyalty there. We're going to see how loyal they are on Wednesday. You know, I think Ivy is probably going to pick Florida. You know, I just think he's choosing a school rather than a coach. I think Cowart's probably going to pick Auburn. And then I think Jefferson might pick Florida as well. So we got to see how the Gators finish. I mean, it's really been a rough transition so far. Florida's never been this low as far as ranking. They're 82nd in the country, ironically just behind Michigan at 81. You know, they need to make a strong push here down the stretch to get into the 40s, and they're always in the top 10. So one bad recruiting year can lead to 2 or 3 rough years on the field. So we're going to see how they recover from this.
Mike, you alluded to a moment ago, but let's look at the best and worst case scenarios for them. If you had to make honest projections, giving them the benefit of the doubt, what would you say it will be come Wednesday?
Well, I think you start tonight with Jordan Scarlett, the running back that decommitted from Miami. They got to get him. Florida State had the last visit, so we got to see what happens there. Jordan Cronkrite's another one from South Florida that's choosing between Florida and West Virginia. Best case scenario, obviously, would be to get Ryan Davis, who's a great athlete from the Tampa area, Cowart, CeCe Jefferson, Martez Ivey, and then land Scarlett and Cronkrite and fill it out with a few other guys, Jeffrey Holland from Jacksonville. But I don't think, you're going to hit on every one of those guys. I think fans would be happy, if they get Ivey, Jefferson, Ryan Davis, and one of the two running backs, and then just push into the 40s, and then, regroup for 2016. That would be the best case scenario. And then there's DeAndre Francois, who tweeted out last week he was decommitting from Florida State, and then said he was hacked and all this other stuff, which, I'm not believing that's accurate. I think he is really confused between Florida State and Florida, and he's, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. That would be absolutely huge for Florida if they could flip him too. So he's another one that's on flip watch. Even though he's committed to Florida State, we got to keep an eye on him.
Could there be? I guess it always could be, but could there be a domino effect? They get one, and suddenly there's a freight train heading to Gainesville.
Well, they all talk to each other. The problem is they're all waiting until the last second to announce. So,
okay.
I don't think they've told each other where they're going, or if they have, it hasn't lined up that way. From my intel, which is, it's hard to get intel on 17-year-old kids because they change their mind every, 2 or 3 hours. It looks good for Ryan Davis. It looks good for CeCe Jefferson. It looks good for Martez Ivey. Cowart, who knows? He changes his mind a lot. Could be Auburn or Florida. I think what's going to be important, though, is finishing strong this year for next year, because all of the 2016 kids watch what's happening now and are going to be influenced by who goes where.
You mentioned Muschamp at Florida, now at Auburn. Talk for a moment about Auburn. Where are they, and obviously we heard a couple of names there that could tilt either way, but what's at stake for them as we head toward Wednesday?
Yeah, they're number 12 in the country. I fully expect them to be in the top 10 as usual. They've been a very consistent recruiting program over the years, despite a few coaching changes. And, they're in it for a lot of defensive guys. Cowart, of course, being the number 1 player, gets a lot of the attention. They're in it for Jefferson, but I don't see that happening. But I think they're going to get Jeffrey Holland, the linebacker from Jacksonville. He's a 4-star kid, choosing between Florida and Auburn. Carlton Davis is a decommitment from Ohio State, who I think is going to stay close to home. That's a very important one because they need corners. Javarius Davis also, I think, chooses Auburn. And corners are of primary need at Auburn, I think, moving into next year and beyond. So they're looking for some guys that can play right away. And then, offensively, we'll see what happens. They're set at running back. I think they're pretty set at quarterback. I think they would like to get, a wide receiver if they could, maybe steal Davis away. But overall, I think it's a defensive class that they're going to finish out with and hope to get those guys and push into the top 10.
You mentioned Alabama. It seems like almost since last year on National Signing Day, Alabama had wrapped up number 1 for this year, but you talk about SC coming on strong. Give us the Alabama perspective.
Yeah, you're right. In the summer, Alabama, it almost looked like it was impossible for them to lose out. But, rankings change and kids commit and decommit, and they got hit a little bit. So, they're hoping to steal CeCe Jefferson away. But, again, I think Florida and Ole Miss probably have an edge over them with Alabama and Auburn trailing. They're going to get Dalen Charlot from Louisiana, a wide receiver that LSU really covets quite a bit. They could get KJ Hill. They're confident they're going to get him. He's a wide receiver from Arkansas, was previously committed to the Hogs, but is choosing between Alabama and Ohio State. And that's probably going to be the way it ends. I don't think they're going to have a big finish here. And as I mentioned, with USC, they've got 3 5-star kids in California announcing on Wednesday. They're the leader for all 3 of them. And then this Porter Gustin kid, who's, to me, the next Brian Cushing type out of Utah. He's going to announce Tuesday, and I think he's going to pick USC. If they get those 4 guys, and there's no huge surprises for Alabama, it's going to be really close.
I mean, I hate to bring negativity into Nick Saban's program, considering they 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7, 4 or 5 in a row. But is there some reason why it's not finishing as strong? Does that have more to do with the fact that this class has been stocked for so long?
Yeah, it's numbers. I mean, it's numbers where they're trying to find room for kids. They realized they wanted another offensive tackle, so they squeezed Isaiah Prince from Maryland into a commitment. He felt a little pressured. A couple days later, decommitted. At that point in time, a Georgia kid, Chidi Valentine Okeke, had already, sort of turned his allegiances to LSU because they took Prince, so they lost out on him. And, it's been kind of, sort of a juggle, trying to find room for guys, and it hasn't worked out as well as they'd like. Now, again, there's no complaining if you're an Alabama fan when it comes to recruiting. They're absolutely loaded with 5- and 4-star kids, and they're going to just regroup. I mean, they've got Calvin Ridley, the number 1 wide receiver in the country. They got Deron Payne, who's a defensive tackle in the tradition of Alabama, is just going to stuff the run. They got the number 1 running back in the country in Damian Harris, and on it goes. So, I mean, there's no feeling sorry for them, but I just think the way things have shaped up, they juggled a lot of numbers.
Great stuff, as always, from Mike Farrell. Mike, thanks for your time. Really an interesting read on National Signing Day. We hope to talk soon.
All right, thanks very much.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Ray is up next in Gulfport, Mississippi. Ray, thank you, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. I first want to say thank you for having Booger McFarland on again. It's a pleasure to hear from him. His intelligent and insightful commentary and analysis is one of the things that make you so fun to watch.
Thank you so much.
Secondly, before I get to the serious reason why I called, I'd like to give a little lighthearted comment to Charles, or answer a question that you posed earlier. I think to paraphrase, you said he just wonders why women aren't calling him to get his phone number. Well, I have the definitive answer for that one, and that would be any woman with an IQ above his age already has his number. So that's the reason I called on a serious note is about Johnny Manziel. I was just hoping that Johnny Manziel checked himself in the rehab. I know we don't have the details from that, and I understand the bottom of the hour you're going to have someone maybe who does. But
I've heard a lot of commentary on that today, Ray, and some people are praising. I mean, no one knows the circumstances. The one thing I will say about this, it always phases me a little bit. I don't want to say disappoints me because it's not my life, but when you see a famous person, a politician, a singer, an actor get arrested, become involved in a public situation, and then the next thing you know, they're in rehab. To me, that's more. There's usually there can be a good effect from rehab, but to me, this looks legitimate. There was a lot of problems, a lot of rumors. Everyone that knows anything about Manziel has seen or heard. So I take this as a very positive step.
I hope so. I really do.
But you know this, Ray. Very few people, particularly the first time, just suddenly say, you know what, I think I need to go to rehab. Now, there are times, fourth and fifth times, that can be an answer. But I think, and I've never been, but I have had plenty of friends and colleagues who have. And it's usually pretty tough to get there the first time around because you have to admit, guess what, that you have a problem.
I have been, and trust me, it doesn't have to go that way. You don't have to go 3 or 4 times, although sometimes that's necessary, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think everyone would be interested in some insight if you wouldn't mind sharing some.
No, I don't mind at all. May I answer a question, or do you just want me to
go ahead. Just tell me. I mean, I don't want to turn this into an interview, but what was your experience?
My experience was I tried alcohol at a very young age. My body's been battered from time to time, and I got involved with some prescription medication.
Mm-hmm.
all along, I was successful, always have been. Coached youth football all my life. I've done it for over 40 years and loved it. And one of the things that hurt me most of my life was having to step back from it when I knew I could not do that in front of children and would not do that in front of children. But it took me three times, with 6 and 8 year periods in between, to come to understand that you have one life and you have one family, and you can't sell yourself short. When you go into rehab, no matter how you get there, you're going to be exposed to things that will help you if you listen and look at yourself in a mirror and say, this is me, this is how other people see me. My ego, forget it. I've got to climb out of this. And so hopefully he'll learn the first time. If he doesn't, he's got to go back. He's got to honestly look at himself. Honesty is the best thing. It's brutal. It hurts sometimes, but it's what you got to go through. You have to. You can't step away from who you really become under the influence of things that should never have been in you in the first place. So that's my comment. He doesn't have to hit bottom. You've heard the comment, everybody's got to find their own bottom. No, that's not necessarily true, because some folks' bottom you don't come back from. Recognize that you've come as far as you have because of your talents, what God gave you when you came onto this earth. Make the most of it. Forget your ego. It's better to live your life as a good man. Influence others in the proper way.
Ray, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Paul. Thank you for having me on.
This was the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We talked about Johnny Manziel at the top of the show with a number of guests. As some of you, or if not all of you, know by now, he is now in a rehab facility. That news broke earlier today. We're joined now by Billy Liucci from TexAgs.com. Not only did he cover Johnny Manziel during his extraordinary career, including a Heisman at Texas A&M, but also has been close friends with Johnny for quite a while. Billy, thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and good afternoon.
No problem, Paul. Anytime, buddy. You're talking about that football game last night. That was something else. I'm sure you spent a lot of time on today, but this is kind of taking the lead here in College Station.
Yeah, I wanted to get, first of all, just a reaction from the community, and then I definitely want to talk to you about your view of Johnny and really what lies ahead. What's been the reaction from the Texas A&M community today?
Oh, I think it's been a lot of support. Everybody's been really supportive. I think, a lot of people sit from afar and can only watch this play out, whether it be through the media or, they read about things online. And, I think there's a ton of sigh of relief being breathed maybe by the Aggie fan base, and that they're really hopeful today more than anything else. But it's been a pretty overwhelming show of support from the A&M fan base. I think I've dealt with a lot of people today and kind of wondering how they can reach out, kind of let Johnny know, that they're behind him. So that's been, I'm sure he would find that really encouraging to see.
In terms of your relationship with him, and I want to walk carefully here, Billy, because when you're friends with someone, it's not appropriate, nor would I ever want to infringe on that. So I'll just toss it to you in terms of talking about the Johnny Manziel and what you've seen in terms of whether something has gone haywire here. Obviously, something is wrong. Yeah, and, for it to get to this point, I think it goes without saying that something was wrong. And it's holding him back in football, yes, but I think the people close to him, Paul, and
You know, the one thing I feel really good about is the team he's got around him. You know, he went with a smaller agency. He's got a lawyer that's, you know, the team is legal. People have been close family friends of the Manziels for a long time. And he's got parents and a family that really care about him. And even, you know, LeBron James and that marketing branding arm, Maverick Carter and those guys. So for such a big star, they've kept that pretty, it's kind of a pretty mom and pop thing in terms of, I've seen it firsthand. They really care about him, the person, and not him, the money-making machine, you know, that he is in terms of endorsements and branding and football. But to me, for them to reach this point and go, it's obvious that there was something, but it was holding him back, I think, more personally even than football. And that's, you know, that's when you start to get concerned about his well-being, not only right now, but after that game's over with. So to me, I'm really, as someone that knows him and cares about him, it's something that really, I woke up today and heard that news and kind of suspected, you know, that something was going on, and it made me happy to hear it, to be honest with you. I used the word hopeful earlier, and, you know, sometimes it's not real easy to, you know, to get past that right away. But to me, when you read about some of the stuff and you see him this fall, he just wasn't himself. He wasn't as happy as he's been, and to me, he understood that the football part was going to be hard. So I don't think that was, you know, what was putting him in that place. So I'm glad to hear it today, and I think he'll be fine. I really do.
Billy, in terms of watching him over the years, my first reaction was he's been through so much. A lot was put on his plate. I think most reasonable people would have slipped and fallen at some point as well, maybe to varying degrees. But you've watched this odyssey. What's it been like?
It's been crazy, and I know he caught some flack, and I think rightfully so. He handled himself so good with the media, you know. He always has, and that, I think the way he handles himself with the media, Paul, and the way he played the game as such an inexperienced, you know, young kid, that people tended to kind of forget that, you know, he was young and was going to make mistakes, and not to lean on the, oh, I'm just 19, or, oh, I'm just 20, I'm just 21. No, you know, he's grown up now, and I think this decision today, I know people weren't going to force him into doing anything, whether it be Cleveland or anyone close to him. So the fact that he's in a treatment facility right now tells me he made that decision, you know, for himself with obviously the people that care about him pushing him, but he made the decision on his own. To me, that's a good sign. But he made that Justin Bieber comment at SEC Media Days, and he caught grief for it. But in a way, you think about it, it does remind you of kind of those child stars, right? That he became so famous so fast. And it's kind of been a whirlwind to just watch and just to see him kind of go from being relatively obscure in public to being, you know, when he walks into a building, whether it's a restaurant, a movie theater, a club, or, you know, even an entire city, to kind of see and hear the buzz that happens when he gets there. So I can see where it'd be, you know, completely overwhelming. And like you said, to varying degrees, people are going to have a pretty difficult time dealing with that. I mean, I think it would take a pretty special breed of a mature human being to be able to manage all that, not to mention the pressure that comes with, you know, as those expectations increase.
In watching him over the years, Billy, he's done things. He's been criticized. You alluded to that. Was there ever a point where you felt, as his friend, that something needed to change, or was it impossible to convey, or did you try to convey that to him?
Yeah, Johnny is a very thoughtful, conscientious person. You know, not just about other people but himself. And I think if anyone that's covered him for a while, probably including yourself, can see that when you really get to sit down and talk with him. And it's not just the way he feels towards other people and media people he deals with, teammates, but it's also himself. So, yeah, he's, we've talked about how everything just kind of happens so fast and how, difficult it is to kind of, manage the whole thing. Yeah, so there's, he has grown men talks with a lot of people, so no question about it. It's not just all one big party for him. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We'll close with talking about Johnny Manziel, the person, and I don't want anyone to think he hasn't died. People, we both have friends and relatives and colleagues who have been through this, and some have turned out great, some haven't. But in terms of how this has all affected him, Billy, I mean, he's become, in many respects, one of the most famous people in sports, if not in the nation. Just put that into perspective as we wind down.
I think, to me, and it's like you said earlier, it's hard to kind of about this, but to me, I feel like this is a step that Johnny's going to look back on, and it's going to be. You said some people succeed, some people fail in that fight, and it won't be over for him right now, right? But as a person, what I know about him is he's, just like everyone can see, he's insanely competitive, not just on the football field, but in any endeavor, whether it's life, whether it's, the smallest, competitive game or anything. He's incredibly competitive. He has a great deal of pride in how he plays the game, and he wants people to respect him, and not just for how he plays football, but in general. And for as much as he acts like he doesn't care, you know what I'm saying? All of the I'm going to continue to do me. I'm not going to back down. I'm a young guy that's just trying to enjoy this whole thing. As much as you hear that, all that stuff kind of says to people, I don't care. But he really does, and to me, to take the step he did today was good, because I think people are going to start to realize that he cares about football and he cares about his well-being, and more than anything else, Paul, he cares about his teammates. You could talk to Mike Evans or Luke Jokel or Ryan Swope or any of those guys. He cares about his teammates, and he values, appreciates the guys he's competing against. So I think all of this is going to be a real wake-up call to the point where he goes, the competitor in him really wakes up, and he says, not only am I going to be, good in football and succeed at this level, but more importantly, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm not really what they think I am at this point.
Billy Liucci on his friend Johnny Manziel. Billy, thank you for being so honest and helpful. I know it's not easy, but we deeply appreciate your time.
Yeah, no doubt, Paul. And I know he appreciates you and your show. And as soon as he's he'll probably spend a lot of time watching TV over the next few weeks, I'm sure.
Thanks, Billy. Talk soon.
All right, buddy.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's check out Andrew next in Birmingham. How are you, Andrew?
Hey, Paul. Thanks again. Just before you cut to commercial break, I just really want to let you know how grateful I am for your show. And I do sincerely mean that. First of all, I do want you to know you're still grabbing in new fans, big fans. I'm 28. I've never been a radio person, but I've gotten a new job in my early recovery as a driver, and I literally am now addicted to your show. You are a smooth operator. It's just such an enjoyable show, and it's been a great thing I've been able to substitute some of my old habits with something like your show. And thanks for doing what you do. I'm extremely grateful.
Andrew, I want to say something about that. And I mean, we joke about being addicted, but I'm not trying to be a psychologist here. I'm not qualified, although it is interesting to deal with a lot of people. But But I think and you said something I think that was pretty chilling, that sometimes people just don't really they can't quite compartmentalize. I mean, you mentioned your child, but I think the problem with a lot of people is they don't really have a lot to look forward to or a regiment. And you just said it. I mean, I'm not using this show, but I mean, there's certain things I look forward to every day, whether it's a program, music, speaking to friends, whatever it is. It helps people get through various crises. I know particularly when people are having a tough time. I was visiting with somebody the other day that's going through something, and friends call, or people check in, or they call someone else. And without that, I think people get lost occasionally and don't really know what to do when the crisis arrives.
I couldn't agree with you more. And sometimes when you're first starting out on the journey such as I have, and so many have, that you really do have to just kind of break it down and do small things, whether it's your 4-hour talk show. That's what I have to look forward to. I go in early in the morning, and I'm listening to half your show as I'm finishing my job, and I hurry on home and finish you up on TV. And it's just, I never thought I really did hate talk radio. I just like, how do y'all do this? And now I love it. I can't get enough of it. I think your show has such a good blend of knowledge and then entertainment from all your old friends, Charles and whatnot, and it is entertaining. And it's actually been a big part of what I look forward to, because I had trouble being such a sports fan, not, now who do I watch the game with? Everybody drinks. That's fine. They can do that. Well, I can't. So it's just finding something, that I'm able to get into, and I've just absolutely dove into it.
Andrew, I'll say this, and I don't want to, listen, I've had close friends, family members, they've been where you are currently coming out of, and that doesn't make me any more knowledgeable. I'm fortunate that I haven't had to go down that road, but I've been to rehab centers with people, and I know how difficult and lonely it can be, and I feel for the journey that you're on, and I'm thrilled to hear what you're saying, because we don't have a specific plan here. We like to inform, but we also like to have fun. But to me, the most rewarding part of this show is when we get a call like yours, where it has had an impact some way, somehow, and that means the world to us.
Well, just know it's bigger than you probably can even think. Again, it's kind of hard to explain the loneliness you speak of, but when you're able to finally start just putting one foot in front of the other and doing the next right thing, things just turn out well. And I hope the best for Johnny Manziel. I meant to say that. I'm so proud of him. I think it's awesome. He must have good people around him. And again, Paul, thanks. Keep doing what you're doing. You're the man. I love your show, your staff, everything about it. And I'm very grateful for your show. And roll tide, my man. Roll tide.
Be well, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
You got it. Nice of you to call in. Ray is up next in Mississippi. Ray, thanks.
Hey, Paul. Back again. Hey, Andrew, God bless you. I know you're struggling, brother. It'll be all right. Just keep moving on. Paul, there was something that struck me about Johnny's situation maybe no one's thought about. I'll give you from an addict's perspective, that he did this before Super Bowl weekend gives me cause to be very hopeful, because from an addict's perspective, it would have been so easy just to say, well, hey, I'll wait till after the Super Bowl. I'll go and have a big party this weekend, no problem. Then I'll check myself in. He didn't do that. It was Wednesday of this week, Super Bowl week. My goodness. Either it was a big crisis or he just realized, I've got to do this, and the weekend didn't matter. Either way, he got where he needs to be.
Yeah, did you see, Ray, where one of the Vegas hotels had offered him 6 figures to host a Super Bowl party? And I don't know what or how that played into it, but he turned them down and went into rehab instead. And that was a very positive decision.
Huge move. unbelievable move for a kid, especially as young as he is. It's like I was saying before, you don't have to hit your bottom. You just have to recognize what's going on in your life. Go and
well,
do what you
Ray,
gotta
there isn't anyone at any level who hasn't experienced some difficulty. And I mean, I was struck when I read after Robin Williams' death that in the entertainment field or field of public personalities, that suicide rate among comedians is the highest, and there's a reason for that. It's a very lonely existence trying to please people with comedy or anyone in that field, because there's and people in my profession, everyone, and I include athletes as well. I've gotten to know quite a few, as you can imagine. There's a high degree of insecurity, but a team will help you, because there is a built-in support group. But those who are on their own, entertainers, if they don't have a good group around them, they're going to get in trouble, and get in trouble very quickly. Because particularly if you're a rock star, I mean, I realize you make a lot of money, and you're like Katy Perry, you're seen by 115 million people last night, but the moment your record doesn't sell, you can't find those people.
Well, trust me, two things you said were very true. One, you've got to have a support system. And two, people who seek affirmation from others are in a very vulnerable place, a really vulnerable place. If you don't have that self-affirmation and a team behind you, especially in a game like football that I've seen from two different sides, you just get lost.
No, you do, and I see companies all the time. They'll send out emails. If you need help, well, who's going to respond to an email? I mean, you need an interpersonal conversation. You need someone to say, "Hey, listen, may I talk to you for a moment?" I'm not going to get an email today and go, "Oops, I better check myself into the." I mean, that's just. I realize there's a reason they do that, and they do have the help, and it's there for you. But there has to be more to it than that.
Well, not to turn your show into the afternoon NAAA open meeting, but you're right. Someone's got to confront you, or you got to confront yourself. Whichever way it happens, you need to be where you've got to go. And obviously, Johnny said, "I've got to go." That gives me reason for hope for him. And people like Andrew, who have been there and seen it and understand, especially with the birth of this child. Well,
I'll tell you what, Ray, that was really chilling to hear that. I mean, the greatest moment of your life, and I've seen it though, and I bet you have too. I know you have. I mean, I've seen people around weddings and births struggle with themselves, like, why aren't I enjoying this more? Why isn't this affecting me? Why isn't this the greatest moment of my life? Or even with a death, saying, why aren't I sad that so-and-so died? I know we're getting pretty heavy here. I'm not trying to turn this into Dr. Phil, but I think these are all very real issues. And I think in Johnny Manziel's case, I mean, I sat back and when he missed the meeting, when he missed the wake-up or the mandatory meeting at the Manning camp, I mean, it didn't take a PhD or a psychiatrist to figure out what the problem was. He'd been out all night, and he didn't show back up.
I think all of us who have been through what a lot of us have been through saw the signs and wondered, how was this going to end? There was fear and hope at the same time. Hopefully it won't end badly, and it looks like maybe it won't. But, my goodness, everyone that's famous and in the public eye, come on, guys. Let's not go down this path all the time of leading people in the direction of I'm famous, I'm rich. It's all about who you really are. It's how you treat your family, how you treat your kids, how you treat your pets. Hey, I don't want to get into Dr. Phil either, so I'm just going to.
That's okay. I have. Listen, I'm glad you called back, and I really appreciate it. And be well.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.